But yeah, speaking of hating yourself, what is okay? So you came up to me and was like, we should talk about dating apps. And most people don't know this. I got notoriety on an app called Clubhouse for being part of a dating room or a dating sort of coaching room. I don't know what you would call it. But and so dating is something I thought about for a real long time, especially I think in my late 20s. Um, but then suddenly I just stopped caring. Like I still am sort of aware because I don't know, man. I'm curious to hear what kind of brought this to you because I'm kind of wary of the manosphere now. Not that everything that those guys say is wrong, but like I don't know. I think if you've had enough success with the opposite gender, you kind of start to realize like it's like, oh, women behave in this manner. And it's like, yeah, and there's less of a sort of an emotional association with it. Whereas I think the current sphere, the current landscape of the manosphere is kind of still angry in some ways. And this isn't to say all people in that sphere who talk about dating is in particular. I mean, I'm a big fan of Just Pearly Things. She's great.
Yeah.
I've been following her for a while before she got famous. I was with her before she was cool, but she's great, right? And there are a couple others who are really great. But I feel like a lot of these guys, especially hearing from guys on Clubhouse, are just kind of still mad. Even the leader of my own troop, right, on Clubhouse is kind of, I'm like, what are you mad at? Like, it feels like you're still mad about something. And a lot of, anyways, curious to hear what brought this up.
Yeah,
because I could go on and on about this.
No, there's so many things that I want to go in there. That's a really good kickoff. I think the reason why I wanted to talk about it is because it's something that everyone is affected by. I don't even think it's generational at this point. Like, even if you're someone in your 80s, you know either children or grandchildren who are using dating apps, so you still have a relationship with it. You still have, it's still in your world. No one is untouched by the phenomenon of dating apps, and it's something that I see a lot of comedians talk about for that exact reason, because comedians will always talk about things that have the broadest influence possible in the society, in the culture. And I'm curious to get your view on where you think it's going and whether you think there's a healthy angle to it. Because it's like you say, when you talk about the men who, the sort of MGTOW types, manosphere types, who've sort of given up on it, or they just use it to find a shag and then that's it. Like, those guys, I feel, have got it wrong. I don't think that's the right way. I understand why they think the way they think, but because they've been hurt and they've been fucked over is probably more poignant as a way of putting it. But then, interesting for you to bring up Pearl, because I think that the women in the manosphere space are the saving grace to the men, because they give it that tempered approach of like, because when men get together, we can just G each other up to go further and further off down that tangent of fuck women, who needs them? And we will, what's the word? We will qualify that view amongst our peers. You know, one of them will say something like, oh yeah, women, who needs them? And then the other one will go, yeah, man, you're totally right. And then before you know it, you're so far down that tangent that you convince yourself you don't need a successful relationship with a woman because your boys have ratified that worldview. So who cares, right? But then you get someone like Pearl comes along and gives the female perspective of like, no, we actually need competent men, and we need it. Do you know what? It's very similar, and this isn't just a shameless. Actually, it is a shameless link to some of our other podcast episodes. It's similar to our episode with Jeff Charles, when he was saying how, oh no, there are actually loads of black people with conservative views, you just don't hear about them. Same thing with like, there are actually loads of women out there who want a man to occupy the traditional male role and who are yearning to occupy the traditional female role, but
Yeah.
you just don't hear about them because they're not the ones who get traction. Like Pearl is the one who's done it, and she's done it very impressively. But I think I really do. I think that she's such an important figure because I do believe that there is an angle. There's another woman on Shorts. What is her name? I can't remember. Like there's a few of them. There's a few of these ladies who I think are really important for these sort of manosphere MGTOW spaces online because they need that female perspective. They need these men need women to go, no, actually we kind of want competent, good, honest men because like they bring it back to the center.
I agree to an extent. I think there are really tempered guys like Rollo Tomasi, to be honest with you, as much weird, as weird as he can be and as much nonsense as he'll get from people. I do actually think he provides a pretty clinical assessment of for the most part. Do you guys hear that? By the way, do you guys hear the engine in the back? Do you
Just
hear
then,
anything
yeah,
in the
but
back?
that's fine.
Frick. Okay, I'll move let me close. I keep the window open because otherwise it gets freaking hot in here. So there we go. Back to silence and my forehead's shining. Okay. So yeah, so I think there's some people who do a good job. Rollo Tomasi being one. Despite sometimes some weirdness he might have, and maybe not so subtle resentment he might have towards people who might be more successful to him. He does have a pretty great technical assessment of sort of, the way women date and behave. But what I've always liked about him is that he never really gave any sort of prescriptive assessment to any things, and he gave more of sort of a descriptive approach, which is like, hey, in X situation, they are likely to behave Y. And it doesn't necessarily apply to all situations, but just be aware, this is, don't be surprised if this sort of behavior occurs. And I think that's more useful because then you yourself are given the opportunity to decide what you want to do with that information. I think you're right in that some men actually need a woman to make them feel better about these sorts of things. But I'm wary and cautious of that, in that I don't think that these women don't have a space in these discussions. More that men still need to sort of lead and have these discussions. Not that there's no place for them. Come on in. I don't, me.
Well, they do, but they need, I do think they need to have them with women. Like we see this at work, right? So like, if you see this in the workplace, like if you take a mechanics workshop, almost entirely male, there are ways, for example, that in that workshop, the kitchen is going to be an absolute shit show. You know that you're never going to be able to find anything. You're not going to be able to find cutlery. You're not going to be able to find cups to make a cup of tea or coffee that haven't got an inch of bile at the bottom. But then in the same way that you then look at something like childcare or like a after school club or something like that, which is predominantly run by women, and they will, there's so much bitchiness that goes on, and there's so much talking about if somebody gets the promotion, there's so much cattiness that goes on behind the scenes of like, oh,
wait. So is there I guess I'm trying to figure it out because I'm trying to help you out right now. Are you trying to say their benefit is they clean shit up? Like, I'm trying
to say that like they what it's an example of actually is hi guys, I'm a misogynist, but yeah, no, it's
send your letters to His Twitter is Ben Has Words.
But no, like what that example actually shows, because this is me thinking on the fly, this is me thinking in real time. What that example actually shows is that you provide order in different ways. So it's like the men would have provided order in the childcare example because they'd go, well, maybe she got the promotion because she deserved it. How is bitching about her getting the promotion going to help you get the promotion? The women in the mechanics workshop example would be like, you know, you'd really enjoy coming to work a lot more if you tidied the fuck up. You know, you'd actually probably it would make the work environment way nicer.
Can you think of another example, maybe beside, because we are gonna.
Oh, for fuck's sake!
I just feel like there's got to be
another dominant male environment. Okay. No, actually, I can't because I'm thinking about engineers, and no, the place would still be a shit show.
Let me help you out.
Okay.
Let me help you out. Fuck you. Let me help you out. Like, I say that as my maid. Literally, you just saw my maid hand me my food.
Male or female? Male or female?
Yeah, well, let's leave that to the imagination, shall we?
Case.
Yeah.
I love women. I don't think women just exist to. No, I'm not even saying that shit. I'm not even falling into that trap of saying that out loud.
You're doing great. Let me help you out. There are situations where diversity of thought helps. I can think of a couple of situations like that. Like, I had no idea that this is really embarrassing, but there was a point in my life I had no idea that periods lasted multiple days. Right. Let's say I was a product owner and I was trying to sell a product to women, and I just proceeded with my product, right, to sell to those women. And I was just like, well, the periods are only one day, right? That should be enough. I would have gotten it so wrong.
The default reaction to that would be ostracizing you. It wouldn't be educating you. And no, but that's a problem. This is what I mean. So it's like now we're reaching a point where, like, yeah, you're right. Maybe it's not the best example in terms of it's really stereotyping women as the ones who clean, but I don't think it's unreasonable to do that because they are the ones who care, by and large, generally speaking, about the whether it's from a pride point of view or just a practical point of view. They are the ones who care. Like, if I've got people coming round and I don't know, there's clothes on the airer after being in the washing machine. Mm-hmm. My approach to that is, well, everyone wears clothes and everyone has to clean clothes. So it's not unusual for them to walk into a house where there are clothes drying. She has to get that put away because it's just unsightly in the house. And she's right. It is unsightly in the house, and I totally get why you'd want to clean it up and put it away and make the place look presentable. I actually understand her viewpoint. I don't see it as worth the energy.
I also understand your viewpoint. And Tyler, keep score. This is Ben's second example for why women are great for cleaning up.
No,
this is
just
what? Why else are they useful, Ben? Well, look, they care.
Oh man, I didn't.
Right? Because
we're supposed to be talking about dating apps. Anyway, right? Hinge, Tinder,
I can't clean out myself.
Toffee, Bumble, I don't know all the rest of them. Do you know?
But if a woman's around, she'll clean up after me because she cares.
Oh, she's gonna kill me.
I don't care. I don't care at all. So again, send your letter, send your tweets to @BenHasWords. And Ben, this was a great last week with you. I'm not gonna lie, this was amazing. This was a great. I'm gonna miss you, buddy. I really am.
Oh man. Fuck's sake.
All right. Okay. So let's get past that, because I can personally name a bunch of different reasons why it's beneficial to have women in the workplace. I've mentored with female engineers. I tend to mentor engineers who, for whatever reason, have always been Asian. So like first generation. I don't know what it is about.
I'm speaking generally, first of all, because engineers
about the whites.
Engineers are a certain but a female engineer is a certain type of person. Leave alone, forget certain type of woman, certain type of person. But then if we do want to break it down by sex, then there is that whole point of women being more interested in people, men being more interested in things.
Sure.
To be
Sure.
you know, if you want to be a female engineer, you have to be in the 85th percentile.
I'll give another example. Another example of female lawyers. There are a lot more women who are lawyers, or a lot more women becoming lawyers than there are men these days. My sister being one of them. My sister has had a 4.0 average since she was 12 years old.
I know that's a good
She's
thing.
20. She's 22. That means she's had a perfect
top,
grades.
yeah.
Literally
The
perfect.
top,
Literally
yeah.
perfect grades.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So she'd be what you guys would call a prefect, or whatever stupid Harry Potter nonsense you have over there. Like she'd be the one in the hallways telling Potter to get back, into his dormitory. No, I'm serious. But I'm serious. Like, they're the ones who are, and this is why I really want to talk to Richard Reeves, who put the book out, top 5 on The Economist, by the way, of men and boys. They're just kicking boys' sort of ass when it comes to a lot of these traditional learning environments, and then that manifests itself in a proficiency in the professional world more times than not. Now, the reasons as to why that is, or whether that's the right thing for them, or yada yada yada, that's a whole, I think, different conversation we could do an entire podcast about. But on whether they possess the proficiency to do those things, I think that much is clear. It's not, to me. To me, the argument isn't necessarily necessity; it's more competence, and they've demonstrated it in boatloads of it, in my opinion. Right? This whole notion that women are worse at math and science, I was never familiar with it until I went to maybe university. Yeah, at my university they did studies on it. But in my high school and in my elementary school, it was basically me and a bunch of girls. Like, the boys were the minority in the like accelerated and high achievement sort of courses, and they were and the girls were, not only were they the majority, and admittedly a lot of them were of Asian descent, and a lot of Indian as well. I know when Americans hear Asian, they think,
interesting that you should say that, because it was the same on my course. It was the only females. So my course was about 100 people. So that makes the percentages nice and easy to break down. It was 92% male, but almost exclusively amongst the females, it was Asian women, and there was 2 Brits, and that was the breakdown of my year, because I did car design. So it was you had to have a significant interest in cars to want to do that for a job, and so that's the way it broke down. But it's like I want to try, and we're really going to need to establish which bits of that we keep in as well, for the sake of keeping this fucking thing online. But I want to pull the conversation over. Well, no, the other thing is, oh god, I can't lose my job yet, like because this isn't financially sustainable at the time of recording. So I can't lose my job just yet. And I work with a lot of my team at work is female dominant, so that's gonna fuck me up something.
I know. Here, let me save you a little bit. I know what you're getting at, which is they provide a sense of perhaps higher level organizational and frontal lobe. I mean,
well, they actually care about what's right in front of you. They care about what's right in front of you. Like, look at when you're parenting. Look at when you're parenting with your if you're wanting to do something that's, say, dangerous or adventurous or whatever. Like, take wrestling, for example, as you were briefly talking about, Tyler. So, like, for example, I grew up doing judo. Very similar thing. My mum will not watch me do judo. Will not watch. She won't even watch videos where she knows I win, because there's the possibility in the here and now, in the moment of me getting hurt. It's the same when I was doing stand-up comedy. My dad was there to watch me. My dad has watched me bomb on my ass. He has watched me fail miserably on a stage in front of an audience. My mum won't even watch recordings of good gigs, because in the here and now, what's right in front of her psychologically is her son is taking a risk, and it could result in a negative impact on her son. And why the hell would she want to? Why would she want that? Whereas my dad is more like, take the risk, see what happens, take the risk. It might pay off. And if it doesn't pay off, well, fucking learn from it. But it might pay off. And like that's not, I believe that to be largely, generally speaking, a constant that you've got. And you need both. You need both. You need someone who's risk averse, and you need somebody who is willing to take the risks.
Nice save, Jimmy. Yeah, no, yeah, that's a great example. No, seriously, that's a better one. There is a natural tendency towards risk averse behavior and riskful behavior, and that is divided along gendered lines. That's just science, and yeah, I think maybe that's why also it makes for a while a lot of women are great lawyers, right? It's like,
right,
hey, don't do that. That'll get you 5 to 10.
What? Yeah.
Right?
What is
Like,
what is the when we're talking about that kind of law as well, like corporate law, that kind of thing? What are we talking about?
Mhm.
Staying within the rules and regulations.
Right.
Like that makes perfect sense. Like this, and it is knowing the
Right.
book back to front. But the main
And what's
thing is
interesting about it,
go on.
the interesting thing I just want to say about that is just because law is so logic focused, and there's this notion that women don't possess the capacity for formal reasoning amongst sort of the more bigoted, right? And if you study the LSAT closely, which I did, I almost went to law school, which is why I know so much about it. And then I got my sister into law school, or I helped get her into law school. Yeah, I did most of whatever. That's a different conversation. But so yeah, like there's this notion that they're just not capable of like formal forms of reasoning, and it's like, well, these LSAT scores cumulatively say something really different from what the popular notion is. So can we really say they're not, capable for this? Again, my point is competence is all I'm after for. Competence is all
Right.
I'm looking at. And to your point, like, yeah, sure, there's a yin and a yang to these things, and they complement one another. But first and foremost, we have to acknowledge that they have the capacity to do those things, right?
Yeah.
And so that's and I think we're in probably. I mean, I know you. I know. I'm messing around with you, but I know what you actually mean. So
Well, see, yeah, because this bit isn't for fucking the actual recording, but so I don't know, like, if we want to cut any of that, then do, because if it is for the sake of
oh, it's hilarious. Keep it in.
oh shit.
Let's keep it in. And
I
then when
need
you
to
get,
why
and then
I need to think before I fucking
if we
speak.
ever get big, we can take it down. But the point is, most importantly, I know you. I know what you mean, and I can give you the generous interpretation, right? Like I know what you're trying to say. So,
Right. But it's like, because, for
um,
example, like one of the things that you and I have spoken about before on the subject of dating apps specifically, which is what we were trying
right.
to talk about for this whole fucking
An hour in, we finally did it. Yeah,
right.
yeah.
But it's like, so one
Yeah.
of the big things is making the first move on dating apps. And so, like, for example,
Right.
again, for all you out there, generally speaking, men pursue and men make the first move. To the point where I was on a thing we were in a room on Clubhouse and we were talking about this. We were talking about dating apps and we were talking about Bumble, because Bumble champions themselves as the platform where women make the first move. Now, in my time using Bumble, matches, that was fine. Messages, no, didn't happen. And it was like, it did, but only under one condition. Now, so on Bumble, for anyone who doesn't know, for anyone who hasn't used it, the woman has to make the first move. The man cannot message. And what happens is, if you match with somebody, the match stays live for 24 hours. And if the girl doesn't message the guy within 24 hours, the match disappears. It expires. But what the guy can do, one of the things that the guy can do, is send an extension of another 24 hours to one girl per day. So whenever I did that and I sent a girl an extension, then I would get a message in response. Now, in my estimation, that is still me making the first move because she did
Yeah.
nothing. I then give her the extension. She gets notified Ben has given you an extension, then goes because she's got the assurance that, oh, this guy is actually interested. Now I'll send him a message. I would still chalk that one up as me making the first move.
Correct. Yeah.
Did you ever use Bumble?
I did. I used Stumble. I used OK Stupid. I used Tinder. I refuse to address them by their actual names because that gives them power, Ben. And I refuse to give them that. I refuse to give them that. I refuse to give them that.
Well, like, because there are some
That got
really
a laugh out of
obscure ones.
that got a laugh out of Tyler, so that one counts. So yeah. So no, I've used all of them. There are obscure ones. There's plenty of fish. There's
Oh, so you're thinking about the AOL type ones. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about the
wow.
No, I'm not talking about like the ones where you use the phone line. I'm talking about the apps that are really obscure. Like, have you ever heard of, I don't know if this is just a UK thing. Go on.
I am not scared to slap a British woman. You understand me right now? I need you to know that. Go on.
Have you ever heard of
go on.
Have you ever heard of Toffee?
No, I have not. What's that?
Toffee is a dating app. I don't know whether it's just for the UK or whether it's used around the world, but in the UK at least, it is exclusively for attendees of private schools. And so now I didn't go to a private school, so I lied in order to get access to this thing. And my God, the amount of basically every photo either had a horse or a horse box in the background. And you're just sitting there and you're going like, as somebody with a pretty sort of typical middle class upbringing, you're sitting there going, oh, maybe this could be my ticket to the big time. Is dating a horse girl? Maybe that could be the way to do it. And then nothing ever came of it because what do you talk about? The other thing was I was too honest. So if I ever did match with somebody on Toffee, they would message going, oh, so what school did you go to? What university did you go to? And I go, oh, by the way, I'm not actually privately educated. I just joined this app to see what would happen. And then they all sort of go quiet. I don't know what those kinds of people talk about if they do match with like, oh, okay, like your horse, you use your horses for show jumping. I use mine for polo. I don't know what conversation can actually arise from just the fact that your parents both have a lot of money and therefore they could afford a private education for both of you. I don't know.
Self-selection.
Self-selection.
It has nothing to do with love. Yeah, it
right.
has nothing to do with love. It's
right.
But what I find funny about that is that people found a way to get on their. What I find funny about that is that people found a way to get on there, anyways.
Yeah. Right. Well, the verification process wasn't strict.
Oh, okay. So I got into a site called The League, and I used it once, and that was I mean, it wasn't that intense, but it was enough. They were like, "We need to see your LinkedIn." I mean, short of them asking me about my like banking statements, right? Because it was supposed to be for elites,
right,
or what have you,
yeah.
right. And so, yeah, like, so I got onto there, and it was like, I mean, it wasn't really this huge sort of, yeah, maybe there was a specific sort of quality to some of these women, right? And it was concentrated relatively, but to be honest, I kind of attracted those girls anyways, whether I was on Bumble or Tinder. I didn't need to be on The League to do that, to be honest with you. So
no, I know what you mean.
I don't know.
And then like,
yeah, like
they all, because they're cropping up a dime a dozen, these apps, and they all have to have their gimmick. They all have to have their one little thing that sort of separates them. And because there's another one called Happen. And then the other thing that I've noticed as well with these apps is they only work for city dwellers. And I don't mean people who live within a gravitational pull of the city. Like, you need to live in the city.
In the city. Yeah.
Because something like Happen is again, for anyone who doesn't know, is it tracks where you've been, and then if somebody literally crosses your path, it will notify you that that person crossed your path, so that they're within your vicinity, and then you can send them a match request, and then you can talk, and then you can set it up that way. But it's all very, very strange, because there's a lot of correlation in the UK, at least, between the ever expanding novelties of various dating apps and the ever expanding novelties of various dating shows. So in the UK, we had a show on Channel 4. I'm going to get the name quickly to make sure that I get this right. Where the plot line of the show was that people were being matched up on whether they liked photos of each other's dogs.
Okay. All right.
This is
I'm
absolutely
listening.
fucking true. The Doghouse is a Channel 4 observational television show following staff. No, it's not that. Okay, right. It's not that. It's not called The Doghouse.
The doghouse would be too much. They were like, that would be too much.
What is it called?
I've heard. Yeah. They'll invite you. Yeah. They'll invite you. I've heard of Raya. I've heard of Raya. I don't know. I don't know if I'd want to be on Raya, to be honest with you. Like Raya is like I don't know. Raya's cuz like if a girl's that it almost this is the thing that a lot of these apps get wrong is like it thinks that what men and women are value in sort of dating are the same, right? Like, do you really care, Tyler or Ben, whether a girl's famous? Like, will that really get your dick hard?
No.
No, probably not. Probably not. Right. And
But
so it's weird to
interestingly,
me.
though,
Raya's
interestingly, you say that, because one of the things that is certainly attractive is competence. So if they're
sure.
famous for, I don't know, like say if it's a athlete, what you actually might be attracted to is the fact that they have a positive mental attitude, that they excelled in their field, that they didn't give up in the face of adversity,
Sure.
and they were competent, they were
Yeah.
good at what they did. That might influence you, but no, not the fact that they're famous and lots of people know who they are.
Right. For me, I'm going to be honest with you. I think for me personally, there's a diminishing set of returns, or yeah, diminishing rate of returns, I should say, on competency. Right. Like if a girl's a doctor, like an athlete, to be an athlete, a pro athlete, that's a high bar. I don't need my girl to be a pro athlete. Like my last girl was a doctor. And that
Right.
was a big deal. I didn't need to know which school she went to or whether she was the doctor, right? She's like,
Right.
I'm the chair of the department of blah 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 at this university. It's like I wouldn't care. It's like, oh, you're a doctor already, jackpot, right? Because you've demonstrated some semblance of competence, and on top of that, you're hot, right? And that was that was still pretty much. I mean, that was, if I'm being honest, that was those two things together was what made her very appealing, right? It wasn't that like I feel like with something like Raya, because I'm familiar with Raya, Raya like it has more appeal maybe to me if I'm a woman, but as a
Right.
guy, it's
Absolutely.
like
Absolutely. Yeah. If
like
you're
what's
looking
in it for
for,
me?
yeah, exactly. Because, do you know what? Fuck it. I'm further enough down this rabbit hole in this episode. Because as a guy,
Hmm.
if you're seeing a girl on Raya, all you're thinking is, oh, okay, so the people around you have money, especially if they're young. Especially if they're young. Like if you see a
Yes.
girl in her early
Yeah.
20s, you're not thinking like, oh, look, there is a possibility that she started a business and become very, very successful. But let's call a spade a spade. What's far more likely to have happened is she's been raised in a very wealthy family.
I mean, statistically speaking, yeah, and I know that's a fact that a lot of people don't like to hear. But yeah, I mean, a lot of wealth is, for at least in the case of women, is transmuted. That's increasingly becoming less and less the case. Although uh, we'll see what happens in the next 20 to 30 years in terms of like retention of net worth. But yeah, I mean, as a guy, I just like, I'm not excited to marry. In fact, I don't want my chick to be famous. Are you kidding me?
Mm.
My last girl, when Snoop Dogg followed her on Instagram, I was like, what the fuck? Delete your Instagram right now. Like that. I was like, what the why is
Oh,
Snoop Dogg
yeah.
following you? Like eh, you know, I don't want my girl to be well known, especially if she's, pretty or, competent. It doesn't that doesn't matter to me because like I said, what men and women are attracted to are just very, very different. And fame is something that, unfortunately, especially in the current context of the way social media is, um, Instagram, especially. I mean, Instagram, if I'm being honest, is just funnel marketing for women. It really is. Like it's just women. Like you are. Like you could be a pretty girl. Like my girl was a physician in another country, right, outside of the U.S., but Snoop Dogg still found her, right, and that's indicative. That's indicative of something, right?
Right.
So,
But it's also, that's something that
so
would never happen the other way around.
right. I mean, like, here's the thing. When I was a comic, when I did comedy, here's this because you asked me, like, did you ever do any bits on
Dating app.
on dating apps? And I didn't because I was a decent enough comic. Like, if you just show man, and it makes me honestly wonder what it's like being at the high level. If you were just a competent comic in your city, you didn't need dating apps.
Oh man, some of the love
You
rats
didn't
that
need
I
dating
met on the
apps.
circuit, and you're just like, how? But they had it. They
Yeah,
had it. They were on. They had. You're right. They were great on stage, and so that enticed women. That got
yeah.
them interested.
And the inverse didn't happen, right? So if I had a good set, not to toot my own horn, but I usually did. If I had a good set, I'd get off stage and there would be women waiting for me. If the women had a good set, they'd get off stage and there would be cheesesteaks waiting for me, right? Like that was the difference. I'm serious. That was the difference.
Yeah.
Like they and I don't know. I do know what it is, but like it's the same thing. Excuse me. It's competence, right?
What do you mean? So
Uh,
the women saw you competent on stage and went, "Let me get a piece of that." But the men,
I think, yeah, saw the women on stage be funny, and they were like, "All right, moving on." Which is, what I always found weird about that is I find funny women very attractive.
right?
Like a girl that's fun, like this whole notion that women aren't funny. I've never understood
It's
it. Like some of
ridiculous.
my favorite.
It's patently
I mean,
ridiculous.
I've had my like I could go real hard in the paint on this one, but a lot of comics that inspired me to do comedy, Natasha Leggero being one of them, Rachel Feinstein, she's a beast, and she's I don't know how she hasn't outshined her and Amy Schumer are friends, and she's vastly more funny or funnier than Amy Schumer. She does these weird sort of old timey bits where she pretends like she's a woman from the 1930s, um, like a dumb. She does this whole like dumb girl voice where she's just like, yeah, yeah. What does she do? She just goes like, "How much for that doggy in the window, sir?" Or she'll pretend to be like a dumb girl from the 30s, and she'll be like, "You told me that when I put on my feet on your shoulders, all the children in the world would like, be able to eat again." Like she did just weird bits like
Yeah.
that. So, anyways, long story short is like, there's so many funny gals out there. It's just that it doesn't appeal to most guys. And even now, when a girl's funny, unfortunately, just maybe this is just a reflection of my experience in comedy. When a girl is funny, the first thing I ask myself is, "Do you have bipolar disorder?"
Right.
Because
Right. Yeah.
because and maybe
Shout
this
out
is
Taylor
this isn't reflect.
Tomlinson.
Does she have bipolar disorder?
Yeah. Yeah. She talks about it in her last
I didn't
special.
even know. I didn't even know that. I didn't even know that. Like, But that's my whole point. I don't know what it is. I don't know if this is like an evolutionary protective measure that we've just formed as men, or whether we just genuinely are just not effing with it. You know what I
Well,
mean?
it's on
Uh,
as an aside, yeah. Just as a thing on this tangent of comedy that we've gone down, it's like one of the things
yeah,
that really does, like, so in the UK, for example, we've had huge female comedy stars before it became a matter of quotas and a matter of filling the, like, there has been a
sure,
decline in the quality of female comics in direct correlation with the push for female comics. Like, we had
sure.
Victoria Wood in the 80s who used to write her own comedy
Love
songs
her.
as well as do stand up. Yeah, hilarious. Then we had Catherine Tate doing the
Yeah.
Catherine Tate show. Great,
Also a goddess.
great
Yeah,
sketch comedy, unbelievable, elite, top level stuff, hilarious stuff.
yeah.
And it was just like, and so yeah, the idea that women aren't funny is just is patently
It's
ridiculous.
preposterous. It's preposterous.
But
But why aren't those men like I don't
well, I
know
think the
if it is
reason why, but the reason why men
competence.
say it, the reason why men say it about, like, oh, women aren't funny, is because the current crop. What I don't get is, so, like, for example, you've got these people, take an Amy Schumer type, who will talk about her vagina
But
for an hour and a half and get paid $10 million. That's probably lowballing it, but it's like, they will say as a defense, well, men talk about their dick all the time on stage. So, yeah, and you don't like that. So why the fucking hell do you just do the same thing? You don't like when men go on stage and talk about their dick and jerking off and all that crap. Like, you don't, if you don't like when men do blue comedy, why would you do it? Like, because that's where the argument of, oh, well, you guys do it, just falls apart. It's like, yeah, well, you don't like it when men do. So why would you?
right,
Like, or certainly, why
right,
would you then be annoyed when somebody doesn't like your blue comedy? Like, I love blue comedy.
right.
I like it's. I mean, when we're talking about people like
What is blue comedy, by the way? Just
blue
for people
comedy,
who
yeah.
might
So
be
anything
listening.
dirty, anything about shit,
Yeah,
sex,
yeah, yeah,
toilets,
yeah.
genitals, that kind of stuff. And then it's fine if that's what you don't like and what you don't want to do, but it's like, I don't know. Matt Walsh said it really better than I ever will, which is when he said that there are a lot of female comics out there who are impressed by their own vulgarity, and that's it, right? And it's because there's no
But most
punchline.
comics, I would argue, most comics are not that funny today,
Yeah,
anyways. Right? Like I like Schultz.
and we
I
say
like
this
Mateo
as
Lane.
deep lovers of stand-up comedy. Like,
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
never mind the fact
I
we've done it. It's more, that's actually by the by. We love it. It's my favorite
yeah,
art form. I love it so much, but it has declined.
yeah, and but you can thankfully, a lot of alternative mediums give you access to really great stand up now. But getting back to sort of the original point, why I'm still trying to wrap my head as to why that isn't a thing for dudes.
Well, like,
Like, why isn't a
if
girl
you
being
saw
funny?
female comedian, or sorry, if you saw comedian in a girl's
No, why isn't that
bio
attractive,
on a
dudes?
dating app,
Yeah,
what
yeah.
would you swipe left or right?
I would swipe left. Yeah, I would swipe left. Yeah, she could be gorgeous too,
Yeah,
but I would swipe left. Just
yeah.
because and this is because I'm now, I used to be really, really open-minded. You know this about me. In terms of my politics, I leaned way more left,
Hmm.
right? Um, but now that I'm sort of familiar with, a lot of these girls, um, no, thank you. Because I understand that on average, unfortunately, whew, uh, they come with a certain set of beliefs. They come with a certain set of uh, presumed flexibility. They're not. They're actually very fixed in what they believe in and what they do, regardless of any evidence that might be
Sorry,
provided
I
to them.
honestly
Right?
thought you were talking about physical flexibility.
Oh, they can't fuck.
That's,
You know?
that's honestly where I thought you were going to. Oh, well, I've just been exonerated.
It's just.
I, I
It's
I've
really
just been
just
I've just been
they
vindicated in
can't.
this episode.
They
Baz
they
is
can't.
saying that
You
these women
really.
claim to be
You,
flexible when they can't even lift their knee
you,
above their hip.
You want it bad, nigga, but I ain't gonna give it to you. No, I I no, I literally mean in just the way they approach life, the way they think about life is not. It's inflexible. It is not. It's not conducive to the way I think of things, and it's man. How do I put this? Like, I mean, this it's so funny to me that you said that Taylor Tomlinson has bipolar disorder. I had no idea, but I could have guessed, right?
Right.
Every time I find myself having fun with a girl, and like, unfortunately, this is the consequence of my own experience. Every time I find myself having fun with a girl or think she's funny, I have to ask myself, what mental illness does she have? And so that's why I'm wondering: is there an evolutionary psychological component? I'm serious.
Yeah. No,
Like
I'm with you. I'm with you.
maybe there's a reason. Like,
But
as
then the thing
men,
is,
we don't like.
one thing that I would say is
Yeah,
in the modern stable of comics, um,
yeah.
forget your Schultzes and your people that are at the elite level, the Premier League, but your current crop of like comics working the circuit, I'd make the same claim against the men. Like there's a lot of it. Like for
Yes.
example, I've told you this before. Wow, we really were supposed to be talking about dating apps. Maybe we'll get back.
I'm trying to keep you focused.
Hang tight,
You're
dear
the one
viewer.
who's like, I have to talk about comedy. Oh, all right, nigga, go for it. Like, yeah, go.
Okay,
Go
we'll
get it.
run that back and we'll see because I'm convinced it was you who brought it into comedy first. But anyway,
But the reason why I brought it into comedy was the way the sexual sort of marketplace kind of took form. Right. I get off after a show. Women would be waiting for me. They'd get off after a show. No one would be waiting for them.
well, it's like yeah. So there
I
was
don't know why that
now.
is.
We may have to put the statistic in the edit, overlay it, but I think I'm remembering this correctly from Rob Henderson, which was that women swipe right on 4% of male profiles on Tinder, and men
Yeah.
swipe right on 60% of female profiles on Tinder. Like,
Yeah.
and that plays out in like there's that Family Guy cutaway scene where Peter's on Tinder and like he's trying to show them how to use Tinder and he keeps swiping right. He goes, "You see what I'm doing? I'm casting a wide net," which is exactly how men approach Tinder. Which is right. Let's get as many as possible and then we'll sift through the matches later. It's the two sexes have a very different relationship with the dating apps because it's like one thing that I noticed was when I was using Tinder in particular, because there were some that were good. Like I think Hinge definitely had a good formula. And I think something to do with that was the fact that you could like specific bits of the profile. And
Sure.
so that then meant you had a conversation starter. So, if you liked their thing when they said where they want to go traveling, and they said, I don't know, fucking Ecuador or whatever, and you liked that bit, she could assume that you wanted to talk about the fact that she wants to go to Ecuador. And you had a conversation starter there. And then you knew that if, like most fucking people on that godforsaken app, if they put where my next travel destination is everywhere, you knew just to not like anything about that person's profile because they were going to bore the pants off you. But it was like, but then there was some. I remember because what Hinge did was it gave people structure for how to lay themselves out and how to sell themselves. Whereas Tinder, it was just this empty box for your bio and you could put whatever you wanted in there. And I noticed a distinct correlation between the physical attractiveness, a negative correlation between the attractiveness of the girl in the picture and the amount written in the bio. To the point where go on.
We'll go up to the point where.
To the point where, if you're talking to an Instagram model, she'll just have her Insta handle in there. And if you're speaking to a girl who is aesthetically challenged, shall we say, she'll have a fucking essay about why she's the greatest woman for you. And do you know what? Yeah. That essay was probably nothing but truth. But you still swipe left. It's a cruel world.
I don't know. I don't know if it was all true.
No, I'm sure it was.
That's very kind of you. And again, nice save. But I will say that I don't know if it was. I don't know if it's true or not, especially with the way that I mean, I'll be completely frank with you. I don't think I ever told you this. Like, uh, before comedy, and then my years after are really when I kicked it up a notch, and I was just a hound dog after
Oh
comedy.
Jesus!
And yeah, no, those are some dark years. But yeah, like I got to a point, and it's interesting. It's be an interesting conversation to have. Like I kind of figured out with like a bunch of other guys, like just exactly what to say to get a girl to sleep with me. And this isn't me being like, oh, I'm so good, I could fucking get it wet. No, like it was more like I got it down to sort of a formula. And once you get it down and you know exactly what to say and get a girl out, whether it be on Tinder or whether it be on Bumble, etc. I don't know. I think after that, I think after that experience, the maybe it was sort of the ego part of me that was like, oh yeah, if I need, I've proven to myself if I really want to
Right,
get a girl,
right.
and I want to get a real hot one too, um, I can do it. And so now that I've won the game, so to
Yeah, yeah,
speak,
yeah.
I've lost interest in it. Kind of like a dog, kind of catching the
Catching the car.
the bumper.
Yeah.
Yeah, the dog.
Oh
Like I
yeah,
didn't know
I
what
had
to
a
do
mate at
with it.
school like that. I had a mate at school like that to the point where he literally like he would he'd be pursuing whichever girl he was pursuing. Like he wouldn't even try and sleep with him. It was the moment they agreed to go on a date with him, he lost interest because he was like,
Who is this?
a friend of mine from school. Like I remember it so
Yeah, I
vividly
was.
because we all used to like sort of mock him a little bit because he was like, go on the date. He's like, oh no, I
No, I
don't
don't
really
feel
want to,
like it.
because
Yeah,
he never said it outright, but you can infer now with the benefit of hindsight. It's like, oh yeah, he just that was how much he just enjoyed the chase. Was he just literally
yeah,
like all he wanted was the approval that,
yep,
oh, okay, she wants to go out with me, cool,
yep,
great, right, on to the next one.
yep,
And it was
yep.
and that's how people treat Tinder though. For the most part, is they just accrue these matches. And like I
But
was like that, but the other thing is because it's a numbers game. So like dating apps are a numbers game. So it's like you have to keep doing it, keep going on it, keep matching. Then you have to keep starting these conversations and you're only going to start a conversation with a small percentage, and then of that a small percentage is going to reply, and then of that a small percentage you're going to meet up with, and then of that a small percentage is actually going to go well, like because it is a numbers game.
yeah, yes and no. I think it absolutely is a numbers game. But like I said, I think once I kind of figured out my own formula, um,
Maybe that's the
you
difference.
know,
I certainly never did. I just sort of lurched from one mild disaster
yeah.
to the next. Like for example, I remember
Name of your sex tape.
his.
Go on.
So the first Hinge date I ever went on, we met at Waterloo Station, and
Okay.
uh, she got the wrong ticket to try and get a cheaper ticket, like to try and get into London for
Hmm.
cheaper. And so she got off the train, and of course, the ticket wasn't letting her through the barrier because it wasn't the right ticket for that journey. And so I sort of saw her struggling. And I was like, oh no, oh fuck, I think that's my date. And then went over and spoke to the ticket guy, and he just let her through, and no problem. I was like, yeah, mate, can you just, sorry, like a ticket's not working. And he was like, yeah, no problem. And then I think she might have been unemployed, and that might have been why, but I don't remember. But then we started walking through Waterloo Station, which is a fucking busy station at like rush hour as well. And then she out of nowhere just turned around and shouted at this ticket attendant, "Fuck you!" And I was so sort of taken aback by this.
Wow.
I remember sort of like we were walking
Why?
side by side, and I took a big step. I was on her right, and I took a big step further to the right, and
But
just
he
went,
helped her.
right.
But
And I just went like, why did you do that? And then she was like, oh, that's my little fuck you to the system, And I was just there like, what? Sorry, the system of getting the right ticket for the right journey. Down with Thatcher. That'll show him. And then we went on a very awkward date, and it was one of those dates as well where you feel like you wasted a good venue on a shit date. Like my brother had told me about this gorgeous little
My whole
cocktail
life.
bar, right?
Yeah.
And we go to this gorgeous little cocktail bar, and I'm just sat there, and then she started showing me videos or pictures rather of when she used to be obese. And it was just like,
Oh yeah.
There's only so many times you can go like, well done, you now have lost all that weight, you look really good, well done.
Oh yeah.
And then she just, and you think, okay, right, we've put the obesity chapter to bed now, and then she brings it up again, and she's like, this is the most I've ever seen you laugh, Tyler. But like, I'm sitting there going like, yeah, great. And then like I'm sitting there going, like, I can't reciprocate with these stories. I've never been obese. What do you want from me? What do you want me to do? And then at the end, oh man, like at the end of it, like I made a joke. I made a joke on the date, like when she saw.
You did not make a fat joke, dude.
No, I didn't make a fat. Oh, that's another
Okay.
story. That's a different story. I did have one girl stop seeing me because I made a fat joke, and she wasn't even fat, like ever, but she got offended.
It was enough.
On behalf of But anyway, so like this date, it goes so sort of terrible. It was one of those dates where like and I didn't want to say at the time because I was worried about how volatile she'd be, that I didn't want to see her again, so I ended up saying it sort of over text. And then got very angry texts in response. Like it went.
Of course it did.
It went immediately from like, because I pulled the classic line of, which I've had pulled on me. I pulled the classic line of, I just don't really know what I'm looking for, which, as we know, is code for I'm not looking for you. And so I tried to put it to bed there. And
you're a kind man.
Well, you're a kind man. Because this is the other thing, right? This is something that I genuinely believe is, men are the ones who pursue, therefore men are the ones who have to deal with the rejection. And it sucks, but you learn to accommodate it, and you learn to deal with it and swallow it. And women don't learn that, or women don't become accustomed to rejection, nor should they, in my view. Like it's because it sucks, it's brutal. And but yeah, that was a very odd date.
They get rejected more than you'd realize. They just,
I'm sure. But only I do believe that only with the advent of dating apps, I think that this is so, because you've got things like Bumble, you've got people out there going like, yeah, make the first move, go on, do it, and it's. And it can work. It can really work, but I think it's the exception, not the rule.
I got banned off Bumble.
Jesus Christ! Why? How? What happened?
Yeah, I told some girl that she was rude, and I don't know. I was on some bullshit for years. And that was really rough. And that was during the clonazepam years of my life. So it's true.
What a name for an era.
Yeah, and so I was just like, I don't care about anything. And I just remember being like, she was like, I think she gave me she said something, and I was like, you'd be lucky to be on a date with me. And they really don't like it. What I've learned is they don't like it when you do that. But I didn't start it. She started it. And so I just said something like that. And I was like, whatever, dude. I was like, you like, the way you talk to me is like so like kind of disrespectful, and like I basically said like you know, I'm going out of my way for you, not the other way around. And then
Jesus,
I don't remember I
Jesus
didn't curse at
Christ.
her or anything. I still kind of believe that to some degree on a lot of the dates that I go to. There's a great tweet I saw of a guy once where he's like, "Hey, you know that guy that like works at Walmart and you're like, I would never date that guy because he's broke." And she's like, "Yeah," and he was like, "Yeah, you're that guy to me." And I was like, and that's how I feel about a lot of girls.
And you're
I'm
telling
like,
me
yeah, you're
that
that.
yeah, okay, you said that women get rejected far more than I'm probably aware, which is almost certainly true. But like, yeah, like that is, if that was said to a guy, I think the guy would just laugh at how impressive that is as a put down. Because like for example, that's happened to me before, where I had somebody put their hand on my shoulder in like the smoking area of a nightclub, then look at me because she heard me talking to my friend, then look at me and then say, "You're not as good looking as you sounded." And
Yeah,
I was nothing short of, I just, all I could think to say was like, I'm actually impressed at just how cutting that was, like, as a line. So well done. Well done. We'll leave that there. Have a
you
good
said
night.
that to her.
Yeah.
You said that to. No, I if, was she. I mean, I would have gone for the
For the
throat. Like
jugular.
I don't. Yeah, man, because I don't know what it is. Like I think some women are sometimes surprised too. I mean, you've seen me interact with girls. Like I don't play that, and like, yeah, I don't know. I would have gone for something funny or something right back. Like, yeah, well, I don't know. Your fans. What you felt her hand on you?
She
Like,
like put her hand on
what
my
did she
shoulder
do?
and then looked at me
Yeah,
and then informed me that I wasn't as good. So what I think that says is that she liked the sound of my voice, then looked at me
right,
in the face, and
right,
the visual let
right.
down the audio.
That's fine. I mean, yeah. I mean, I would have said a bunch of things like, "Oh, that's funny," because you the touch of your hand, right? Like, what it reminds me of a man. I would have just shot right back because I feel like that's kind of what they're after some of the time. They're
Look,
not actually after
maybe it
like
was like, look, we're talking here at a time in my life. I don't know. This wasn't like, because I now know I know the code now of, I was on some
sure.
bullshit. I know what that means now when you say that. I so if we're saying that, like, I was never on some bullshit. I had brief episodes of on some bullshit, but it was never
Of bullshittery,
of bullshittery,
but
but it was
you
never a
dabbled,
prolonged.
right?
I wouldn't call it an era of my life. What was it? The clonazepam? I don't know what these drugs are called.
Don't worry about it. So okay, so yeah, it's clonazepam, but it's
Clonazepam.
yeah. It's not good.
So
Don't take
I
it,
didn't have a
kids.
clonazepam era of my
You don't have
life.
a fuck boy. You don't have fuck boy years. I have fuck
I
boy
don't,
years. I have fuck.
no, oh God, fucking hell. I'm forgetting that like people I know are going to watch this. No, I don't. Not certainly,
Authenticity.
certainly not by modern standards. Certainly not by modern standards.
Wait. What do you think that is? Talk to me.
I'm thinking that's like multiple people, like more people in the week than there are days.
Fair enough. Okay.
Right. So like
Fair
I
enough.
never had
Yeah,
a
yeah,
I never had a time in my life like that. But it was like, but I made the mistake of going to university, and so that comes with a certain amount of degraded godlessness. And so yeah, like,
yeah. Yeah, man. I did, and yeah, it taught me a lot. It taught me a lot about people and relationships, and that I needed to get off this drug, and that yeah, once you reach a certain, the friend that you mentioned, where it's like, oh, she wants to go on a date, and your guys are like, well, you should go on the date, and he's like, I don't really feel like it. Like that's very relatable.
but
I feel that now.
especially when it's
Hmm?
quantified through these apps, like especially
Oh,
when you can just scroll through and go, yeah, see, I'm attractive to someone somewhere, and that's enough for a lot of people. No, like, it really is. Like it's enough for a lot of people. Like it's a very
yeah.
like,
But you know what's interesting, Ben, is we talk about this for women a lot. Like actually, like, hey, they use these apps for validation.
Yeah.
I use this app for validation too.
Yes, quite. But it's like, but
So
the other thing is, it's like, I remember saying, I think I brought this up in one of our other episodes. I think it was the Josh Olin episode, whereas I was having a conversation with my late grandpa about dating apps because I met my significant other on one, and so
yeah,
he was saying, so but isn't it like you don't pay any price for rejection? Which is interesting because that's also something Jordan Peterson has said, and he's never watched Jordan Peterson a day in his life. And it's so it's interesting that those two men have come up with those same thoughts
so
independently.
funny. That's
But
so funny.
and it's true to a point. It's true to it. It's true if all you want to do is accrue the matches for validation. But if you actually want to go on a date with another human being, you still have to face rejection because you have to meet up with them, and they will form a new impression of you, and then they can reject you after that date. So it was just like I remember saying to him, like, looking round the bar or the club, Grandpa, is now looking on an app, but you still have to meet them and speak to them if you actually want it to go anywhere. If you want to
Well,
qualify the relationship.
to be honest with you, I do better in person than I did on the
Yeah.
apps, which is why I think I devised that formula. Right? It's like let me get
So
her
were you
number and like
when you were on some bullshit? Were you using dating apps or no?
yeah, I
Oh,
was.
you were.
Yeah,
You were.
yeah. When I was doing comedy, I didn't have to because first off, I was so focused when I was doing comedy
Mhm.
that it wasn't really sort of my main. It wasn't really part of it, right? But then, post comedy, yeah. Um, I devised. Wait, repeat your question again.
Were you using the dating
The
apps when you were
Yeah, yeah,
in the
yeah, yeah,
I've
yeah.
forgotten the fucking name again,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
Klizmanapan era.
the clonazepam eras. Yeah, my fuckboy years. Yeah, I was using the app. I've apps. I could figure out how to get a girl's number and just like I don't remember how to do it now, but I was like DMing like strippers on Instagram,
Right.
right? And I was able to get their numbers. And again, this isn't me being like, oh, I'm such
No, I look, I'm with you.
a
As somebody who was very bashful around women for a very long time, it's like there seems to be a switch that I think that goes in a lot of men's heads when they get to a certain age, like entering their 20s, really, where they realize that audacity can get you a lot of the way. Like if you just have the balls, like, because
yeah,
like, for example, take that stripper who gets men coming at her all the time. There is something
yeah.
in her, at least to a degree, that
No
goes, well,
pun
he had
intended.
the balls to DM me, so fair play. Like, there is
Yeah.
definitely that's definitely a component.
But it wasn't that. It wasn't just that, bro. I don't know what it is. Like you have to like. I don't know. It's so cheesy because it's like the way what I feel like matchmakers or like red pill guys would call it is game. But like
Right.
the old school name or the old world name for it was charm or sort of right or like
Oh,
or
that's so
or
funny. Yeah, like I think the difference there is like, because one of the problems with when we talk about game is charm is a byword for sincerity in that context.
right,
Game
right.
is a
That's
byword
true.
for the opposite. Game means that, like when I hear game, if I hear that, like, oh yeah, I've got good game, what I interpret from that is like, oh, you can deceive a woman into bed with you. Now I know that's not always true, but it's like if you, because yeah, game to me implies, first of all, it's something that you've learned, you've acquired these skills, and you deploy them in a very calculated manner, as opposed to it just being naturally occurring charm.
Yeah, yeah. I can. So that's the thing. In person, I have charm. In these apps, it was definitely game.
I
Like
know what you
a
mean.
hundred
I know what
percent.
you mean.
Like I knew exactly what to say to get their numbers. I knew exactly what to do. As soon as I got their numbers, I would either text them or call them, and then set up a date immediately. And I was in, and I knew that would work. And then I knew if I wanted to sleep with someone, I knew exactly what to say to, and what sort of like, I don't know how to describe this, like emotional journey to take them on, that I could get them within the first date. And once I figured how to do that, and it was able to repeat it, right? Because the way my mind works is very analytical, right? Like you're talking to a guy who kept spreadsheets of his jokes, right? When he was a comic, and once I was able to get to that point where I knew exactly what to say, and exactly what to do to get the box, so to speak, it wasn't as exciting
Right.
anymore.
Right.
And it was more like that's why I said it from the top. Like, I think it really was an ego thing, bro. It really was,
Well,
because like as soon as yeah,
this is something I say to my single friend, sort of city boy types. Now, like now that I'm in a long-term relationship, it's like you've just alluded to it there, is like, because this is an ever-present challenge, is to sustain this relationship. Like, like,
right. And
and
the
that,
skills to hold a relationship are different from the
right.
skills to just get a woman into
Because
bed,
this is the longest
right?
relationship I've ever had, and that's continually true. So
Right.
each passing day, this becomes even more the longest relationship I've ever had. And like that to me is like maybe it's getting older, maybe it's whatever, maybe it's a different stage of life, but it's there going like, oh no, this feels like the real challenge. And this feels like
Yes.
the challenge with the
Yeah.
because like you say, when you've established your game, when you've established your once you know that you have an affinity with the opposite sex, it's rinse and
Yeah.
repeat.
Right.
And then
Right.
the excitement wanes. Like it's
And you
go on.
and you know what's really pernicious about that, and what's really dangerous, is that, and I think Peterson talks about this as well, is like you reach this point where you're not even valuing these people, right? Like, and that's what they are, is people, right? And it's hard to resist dark triad, antisocial like
Yeah.
behaviors, because because you know what to do, and you can get what you want. And so why you're the more why be chained down by things like
Yeah, yeah,
consideration of
yeah.
another person's feelings, or the consideration that this person might be a human being, right, and have their own thoughts and dreams and desires, and you know the sort of hip hop fuck bitches get money mentality, I think has its place. But then you grow up,
Yeah.
and then you realize that life is really more complicated than that. Now, are there still certain rules that I think men should adhere to, especially within the context of dating apps? Yeah, right. But if you're looking for something meaningful, I'm not sure if those apps are the best place for those sorts of things. And I think that as a man, like a lot of the manosphere talks about the risks to women. Your risk as a dude is honestly dehumanizing women. Which,
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
I'm not that guy. I'm not the guy who's like I'm not, Mr. Ladies. I'm not that guy, right? Like
Yeah. No, it is.
but
You're right,
but
because it's just it just becomes a mentality of right onto the next conquest,
correct.
rather than taking it seriously. Although interestingly, because I know, and maybe it's a case of because I'm a firm believer in you attracting what you project. And so,
Sure.
because I've come into a long-term relationship that started on a dating app, I I happen to know quite a few people who've done that as well. And what's interesting to me is like I don't actually know if it is, and this is the conversation I was having with my grandpa. Is like I don't actually know if the landscape is any different. I just think it's more easy to quantify it now because you can go, oh, this is exactly how many people wasted my fucking time, for me to get to somebody who didn't. But it's like but I don't think that's any different. It's like there are plenty of people out there who, before dating apps were a thing, have had to sift through the rubble in order to find a diamond.
But it is different because, like, gosh, how did people date before? It's like, who's in this town? Who's great?
Right. It was a luck of geography. Yeah.
Right.
This is something
and
we
now,
hear.
like I said,
this is something we hear the Tate brothers talk about a lot. You know, where it's like Instagram being the greatest dating app, and yeah.
But it is.
Yeah. No, I don't disagree at all.
I actually, this is ironic. A lot of guys hate Instagram DMs. I love it. I had a like, they're great. And gosh, man, I feel like I'm projecting myself as again, I'm not trying to project this necessarily a top G persona. It's just that they worked for me.
Yeah.
And on top of that, like, I don't think they are good for the future. Like, I disagree that with the difference strictly being, oh, now I can quantify, or maybe not disagree completely, but maybe let me push back a little bit. I don't necessarily think it's just, I can quantify, how many people wasted my time. It's created this sort of competition where I think women are looking toward, here's what each side loses. If you're a man, you are at risk of losing your humanity and focus. If you are a woman, you're at risk of losing your self-respect and clarity. And what I mean by that is you are less likely to, you are likely to be used by men, and you are more likely to be less certain and less sure of what it is you actually want in a relationship. And by the way, guys suffer that as well. I bring this up with women more because that seems to be what's more salient in my conversations in my day-to-day with women, which is, I'm looking for a specific sort of man. I'm looking for a specific sort of relationship. Okay, then why are you participating in X, Y, Z decisions?
Yes.
Right. And you have to, like, you and I need to watch this documentary together, but you have to understand that these people have hired literally neuroscientists who study the effects of hard drugs like coke, right?
Yeah.
And amphetamines, and have wired people so that they can get addicted to these things. And so that's the other thing is, like, I understand what you're trying to say, but as someone who's worked in tech, and by the way, another thing you should understand is, because I was going to work for a dating company, and actually maybe I could get him as a guest, but I used to listen to the inventor of OkCupid. I was a big fan of his band, Bishop Allen. And so I connected with him on LinkedIn, and I was like, "Hey man, really love your band, Bishop Allen." And that's how we became connected on LinkedIn. So it'd be cool to get his thoughts on the matter. But to my original point, I lost it. What was I talking about? I was talking about what was I talking about? Frick.
You were talking about, there's another thing that I should know. You nearly worked for a dating app company.
Yes. No, dating apps, low margins, real low margins.
Profit.
They're not successful. Yes, they are not, and not just. Yeah, I'm talking revenue, not profit. Revenue. There is not much money in dating apps. If you present another dating app idea in front of a VC, they will laugh you off the stage unless you bring it, or you've proved your success in this within this application. There's a couple of guys who I know are CEOs of a couple like up and coming dating apps in the dating game. There's one Harvard kid I know he's really great, gay guy, very gregarious, very highly intelligent. Maybe we can get him on, but for the most part, not a lot of money in dating apps. And so this incentivizes dating applications to find every trick in the book to take money from you, especially if you are a man, right? Because the majority of dating app users are not women, they are men.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's like a 60-40, 70-30 ratio, something like that. And So once you take that into consideration, you have to ask yourself, okay, well, there's not much margin on these applications. What are some ways that we can devise to retain users? Or if you're not interested in retaining users, making users spend money. And a lot of those apps have figured it out. Tinder, for example, I know I've heard millions of stories of people going, I didn't get any matches as a guy, right? Being like, I didn't get any matches on Tinder. And then I got Tinder Gold. Suddenly the algorithm opened up for me, right? So and then you don't even, you take one step further back. What are these if the margins are low and the only times you can find success are if you pay the application, well, how do you as a business model make sure that revenue stays consistent? Well, it's kind of like healthcare companies in some way, where you're actually disincentivized to find a cure or to help people who are ailed, and you're actually incentivized from a business perspective to keep them alone. Now, at this point, I'm going to just take a step back and say this might be conjecture, but it does make sense, just with a bit of armchair reasoning, right? Like, you're not incentivized to bring people together. You are not incentivized to marry people. Tinder's not incentivized to make sure you are married.
No,
It is
because then you stop.
incentivized to draw money out of people. Exactly. And it's incentivized not to draw money out of a specific group of people, which is men.
Yeah.
So I don't see
100%.
much use in them.
No, 100%. Like, this is why it's interesting looking at something like an example like Hinge, because Hinge has positioned itself with the whole kind of like their tagline, designed to be deleted, and you've got this
Very clever.
very clever, and it's this whole point of like, and they added little features like, whether it's bullshit or not, even if it's a charade, it still works. But like, because you would go on a date with somebody, and if it noticed that you'd stop talking, it would prompt and go, did you meet this person? And then you could go yes, and then it would go, is this the sort of person you'd see again? And then you could go yes or no, and then it goes, we'll use this to influence future matches. That could be bullshit, but even if it is,
I don't think it's bullshit.
I don't think it's bullshit either. But let's say if you put your cynical hat on, it could be, but it's like, because it could just, but it at least makes you believe that this is taking itself seriously. And then they seem to have taken a different angle, which is the whole thing of like, because if you sustain a successful relationship from it, maybe you'll be more likely to recommend it to somebody, and maybe they're going down that road, because like Tinder is the dating app, like it's synonymous with dating apps. Like you're like you could go on a fucking date through one of these obscure ones like Toffee or Happen, and if you were speaking to your friends about it, you'd probably still say, yeah, I was on a Tinder date, and they would know what you meant.
Still get it.
It's
the Nintendo of
exactly. It's the Nintendo
dating applications.
100%. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's exactly the Nintendo to Byroad or whatever. It's the synonymous brand name with that product or service. And it's very, but then part of me thinks that maybe something like Hinge wouldn't be possible or wouldn't be successful without something like Tinder, because Hinge only works in contrast to Tinder, in my estimation, because you've got Tinder being the sleazy one, and then you've got Hinge being the one you quote unquote take seriously.
Maybe, man. I don't know. I still, I mean, the way, I mean, it could be, or it could be just a very clever means of positioning yourself as if you're the antithetical to sort of the big bad wolf, that being Tinder, but still you still perform the same, you still behave the same way.
Well, this is the point, right? I'm not the reason why I bring it up, just to close that point off, is like, the reason why I bring it up is because I'm not trying to say that like, it's any different. I'm sure they play the same algorithmic games. I'm sure they do the whole thing with, they will absolutely limit the number of matches you get in order to entice you to pay for the premium version. like I'm sure that's still at play, but it's like you say, very clever to use the marketing strategy of designed to be deleted, because it gives you this reassurance that, oh, maybe they really do care.
Maybe, but I don't know. The thing that informs all of this for me is the ineffectiveness of dating apps as a whole, whether it be Hinge or Tinder or not. I'm reminded of the OK Cupid studies. What's the former OK Cupid? Man, I've talked to this guy before too. I don't know him as the OK Cupid CEO. I know him as the lead singer of Bishop Allen. So was it Sam? I like Sam. I like his band. Yeah, Andrew Yeagan. That's not it. Is it Andrew Yeagan? Is it Sam Yeagan? Let's see. Former OKKB2 Cupid Bishop Allen. Hang on. Bishop Allen. Christian Rudder. Christian. I like Christian.
Right.
I can see what Christian's up to. So the reason why I bring that up is Christian. So Christian, former lead singer of Bishop Allen, used to put out these studies for OkCupid, and he had to take them down eventually. I've never asked him about this, but I should. Yeah, I'll see if he's still on LinkedIn. And there have been studies on, like, he was the guy. The whole 80-20 rule that, like, the manosphere puts out, which is like, okay, 80% of the messages go to the 20% of men. He was the one who discovered that.
Right.
He was the one who pointed that out. And it got so much play in the manosphere, he had to take it down, even though it was the truth. It's not like he.
When you say play in the manosphere, what do you mean?
I mean that it's what the talking heads in the manosphere mention the most. Something called the 80-20 rule, which is basically 80% of the messages that women send go to 20% of the men, right? And yeah, and the Rob Henderson metric that you mentioned is kind of is focused on Tinder, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's devolved that further, because the 80-20 rule is quote unquote outdated in that regard. But Christian put that study up, and he got into trouble. I mean, a lot of the stuff he put up, he got into trouble for. Like, he put that study up. He put the other study on how men and women view attractiveness. Right. What he did was he played the numbers on, how men view attractiveness and how women view attractiveness. Women view, again, it's funny that this number keeps coming up, but about 20% at the time, they viewed about 20% of users on OkCupid of the men as actually attractive, and 80% of the men as unattractive or undesirable.
Isn't it like, because the skew, just as an aside with that statistic, because isn't that one it's famous for, like, only 20% of men are seen as in the top half of attractiveness.
Yes.
Like above the 50th percentile.
Correct.
80% of men are, if you showed women in the street and went, is this man,
they would say that he's unattractive.
Is he above or below the halfway point of attractiveness, they would put 80% of them below. Like below the 50th percentile.
That's a great point. That's a very subtle point. I'd have to check the numbers. It's hard to check the numbers because he had to take down the study back in the day.
Yeah. But anyway, sorry, that was an aside.
Yeah.
You were saying.
No, but it's a subtle statistical point, and I think it's well worth bringing up, right? Which lends credence to, if that is true, then that makes Rob's numbers even more salient, right? Because it's like, okay, well, it's completely different from what the manosphere says and spits and regurgitates, which is 80% of women find 20% of men attractive. Actually, 80% of women find only 20% of men attractive at a starting level, right? Which is a very different point. But I don't know if that's true or not. I think it was 80% of messages were sent to 20% of men, but I could be wrong. So he got that got taken down, and then on the other side of that was, if you looked at what men found attractive, right? It was a bell curve.
Yeah,
it was fascinating, right? So there were lots of girls at the end, or not very few. Excuse me, very few women at the ends, right? Very few women who were considered 1, 2s, and 3s or whatever. Very few women were considered 8, 9s, and 10s. From a mathematical standpoint, from a perspective of standard distribution, it vaguely makes sense, right? And then the vast swath was in between those numbers, right? So, and that kind of challenged this notion. It did a couple of things. It gave insight on what who the highly selective sex was, which honestly, from an armchair evolutionary psychologist perspective, makes sense, right?
Yeah,
Why wouldn't they be the more
yeah.
selective one? That's kind of their thing. What does Jordan Peterson say? That's their gift. That
Well,
is
it's
their
also
gift,
he also
right?
says that that's what separates us from chimps, evolutionarily speaking.
Interesting.
Because he made the
Really, are
point.
men are the selectors?
No. So what he made the point on Joe Rogan is that with chimpanzees, it looks as though the female is being selective, but in fact, what's actually happening is the dominant male is scaring all the other males away.
Hilarious.
Whereas with humans, it's actually the woman who is sexually selective. The woman can,
Right.
because and we see it in a societal viewpoint, but also biologically, women control access to sex. They like there's the joke that goes around online
Yeah.
of the what's it women men sleep with who they can but marry who they want, and women marry who they want. Sleep with who they want, but marry who they can. Like that's the
Whom they
sort of
can. Yeah.
very
Yeah. Yeah.
offhand,
Yeah.
off-color joke. But it's like,
Right.
but yeah, that's apparently that is primatologists have ascertained that is something that
Interesting.
drove our separation from chimpanzees, is that human
Interesting.
females are sexually selective.
Well, That's very interesting. We could have a whole conversation
Right.
about that. But just to finish the point up is, so it countered that notion, right? But a lot of people didn't like that. They didn't like the idea that it might suggest that women might actually be more physically, what's the word? Selective. They might be more. Maybe this is
Right.
probably the perception that happened at the time. They're more shallow than men,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And they didn't like that, and so Christian had to put that study down. Another study he had to put down
Now that's something that
was
I don't like. I'm not. It's not for me to say whether or not I agree or disagree, because if it's a statistic, it's a statistic. But that one shocks me, because I would say
why?
because one of the things that I've said for a long time is like, if you sort of look at like a Hollywood award show,
Yeah,
you would see like a physical mess like Harvey Weinstein with a 10 on his Zimmer frame. And then, but you'd never see a Chris Hemsworth with, give me a fat female celebrity.
Rebel Wilson.
Rebel
She was
Wilson,
fat. She's
or
not
she
fat
was,
anymore.
yeah, or a Melissa
Yeah.
McCarthy. Like you'd never see Chris
Also
Hemsworth.
skinny, yeah.
Interesting, but like you'd never.
Adele. Adele. How about pre-21
There we go.
album? Adele. There you go.
Right, so you'd never
She's skinny
see
too now.
you'd never see a Chris Hemsworth of a pre-21 Adele, because you just wouldn't. But you would maybe see like a business mogul or like a fat 55, 60-year-old
Right.
guy, because he's
Right.
got competence or he's got resources or he's got whatever, with a straight 10 woman on his arm. You know?
Right. Well, that's because again, it's when it comes to just strict attractiveness, women. That's because attraction is actually really complicated, and what women want at different points in their life, and what ultimately they're attracted to, can vary, and that variance also appears within it appears in two ways. One, in terms of what they desire, but also depending on the age that they are in life, how that desire might manifest itself, right? And at least that's from what I've studied, right? So when they're, and again, this is me just stealing from Rollo Tomasi. He loves to play the clip from Breaking Bad. Say my name. All right, there you go, Rollo. I said your name. And so Yeah, it's complex, right? You can be that older business guy and maybe secure the 10 because maybe you possess power, maybe you possess which is something which is linked to security, which is another thing women are attracted to,
Yeah.
right? In the case of those sort of overweight guys, Harvey Weinstein's not a good example, but another
I meant
you're
ugly,
really
you know,
nailing it.
like
You're
yeah.
nailing it. You're nailing it with these examples. You could say Harvey Feinstein, Harvey Weinstein-esque. How about that in terms of the looks? Uh,
A fat, ugly man. Fuck it. Let's just say it.
yes, but he's of immense, right? He has a lot of wealth. And then what's going on there is a trade, right? You are beautiful. I am egregiously wealthy, right? You have access now to that egregious wealth because how many men actually have that sort of
Quite.
access to an egregious amount of security,
Indeed.
right? Like we've had this discussion we had this discussion online the other day. Technically, I'm in the top 1% of men not technically, I am in the top 1% of men my age.
Economically, yeah.
And economically speaking, right? And that to me is like insane because even to me, I'm just like, this is still not enough. Like this is still like this is like I'm like I need to like this. I have this business plan. I have this blah blah blah. I have all these plans, right? I'm working like a dog. I do all these sorts of things. I have all these sorts of schemes. This podcast being one of them, right? But the ultimate point being that that what pushes them over. I mean, it reminds me of this saying: men, what is it? Men compensate, women complain. Right. So if you're a man and you are, earth-shatteringly ugly, maybe not Harvey Weinstein, but who's an ugly guy in pop culture? I don't know if anyone can think of some. Tyler.
An ugly guy in pop culture.
Who's really ugly? Pop Smoke is a famous rapper in the U.S. that I know that you have no idea whom he is.
I haven't got the faintest idea.
I know Tyler does because he hangs out with niggas. So Pop Smoke, he does. So Pop Smoke is a very unattractive man, but he has like a crazy amount of baby mamas. Because he's done very well commercially. He's done very well money-wise, right? And so that's where the only way that for that to happen, because I feel like we're sold as a kid, especially if you're like more scholastically inclined, as I was, you're sold as a kid this notion that you will sort of eventually kind of quote unquote win a gal at the end of the road, but you only really win if you achieve outlier levels of success. That's really the only way, in my opinion, for you to obtain that. And then the question becomes: is that worth obtaining? I don't know. That's a whole different conversation, right? It depends on whom you are, what you're looking for, et cetera, et cetera. And then the last thing I'll say that I think is really interesting about all this, and which is also why I don't deal with dating apps, is, and man, I'm going to message Christian. He's going to be like, I'm going to be like, hey, remember that time we talked about Bishop Allen? Do you want to come to the show? The other study he had that was taken down, which was really interesting to me because I was like, why did they take this one down? Was he also did a study on race? Now, let me preface this by saying, like, I don't care what your preferences are. It doesn't matter to me. Like, I never will judge that, right? It's like, that's your thing. I don't care. I don't have a thing. Everybody has their thing. Never going to knock it. I don't have a really strong thing for Asian chicks because I've never been interested in having sex with a CD case, but that's a whole different thing. But like you've never wanted. I heard somebody. I wish that was my joke. That's Patrice O'Neal's joke. Like, apparently Louis C.K. came up to him. He's like, oh, I think Asian chicks are really gorgeous and they have really great butts. And he was like, oh, nigga, you want to have sex with a CD case? And I thought that shit was hilarious. But like, no, but like everybody has their thing. So let me just take that out of the way. Let me get that out of the way.
Oh, this is gonna be the one, isn't it? This is gonna be the one where we move to Rumble.
It's nice to be on Rumble, you guys. This will be the one. Finally, yeah, right. We did it. No, but this to say that if you look at the sort of messages and message responses based on race, and this is something my certain members of my friends don't really like to hear. This is, if you're an Asian guy,
Yeah.
good luck, buddy. Good luck, because they are not biting. I don't know. I don't know what it is about Asian dudes. I feel like sometimes the white women look at them and just think about when the next Rush Hour is going to come out. So like there's just no sense of attraction for whatever reason. Yeah. I say that facetious.
No, I know
shout
what
out
you mean.
To my Asian
no,
talks.
I've had a Malaysian friend of mine say the exact same thing. He said like, like if you look at the stats, if you look at the dating app statistics, like I'm not a sought after demographic.
Yeah, and by the way, like a lot of people like to think that it's just black. It's like black guys actually overperform. I think we overperform in the sexual market, right? And I'm mixed race, but when a white American woman sees me, that's not what they think, right? So I think black dudes overperform in the sexual market, but when it comes to relationships, especially in the context of dating apps, it's a lot harder. It's a lot harder. Because it's almost like it's, and that's been my experience as well. Again, I don't want to make it seem like, oh, well, it's me, I'm blah, blah, to try harder. Like, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying what the stats say. And, you can draw your own conclusions from it. And I don't think it's completely, what's the word? I don't think it's malevolent. I just think people have their thing, and that's okay. Right. So, but I thought it was interesting that they made him put that one down too. Well, actually, it kind of makes sense when I think about liberals. Yeah. So, yeah. But no, anyways, interesting stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. To conclude, then, what have we learned?
Don't you ever end this podcast with "to conclude"? I swear to God, how fucking dare you?
To
conclude?
To wrap
what are you,
this
a 6th Street?
Up? What
much better?
What would you say we've learned about dating apps in this discussion?
Don't use dating apps. Don't use dating apps. Meet people. Go do your thing. Go work out. Seriously, go lift. Do you know how many times I get hit? Like, you get hit on if you're in good shape, women will find any excuse to touch you. They will do anything. I remember one time I was doing pull-ups on I was on the pull-up bar. I don't know where the hell that sentence was going. I was doing pull-ups. I was like, where does one do pull-ups again?
I was gymming in the gym.
I was gymming in the gym.
Yeah.
I was running on the running machine. I was running on the runner. Yeah, and I remember I was about to fall, or not fall. I was finishing I wasn't falling, actually. I was finishing a set, right? And that last pull, you just drop because you're just like, oh my God, I'm exhausted, right? And I remember this woman kind of ran in and she was like, oh, I was trying to catch you because I thought you were gonna fall. And I was like, I wasn't gonna fall. This is my last set, right? And this is when I was in like my prime, right? This is when I was like just diesel, right? And girls will do all sorts of things, weird things like that. They'll bump into you when it's clearly, when they think, and pretend like it's not on purpose, when it was very much on purpose. They'll look at you. It's interesting because this could be this whole other episode. Man, we should get a bodybuilder on. Let me get one of my bodybuilders.
Yeah, let's do that.
To talk about this because it was interesting to be on the other side of that, because it's like the way they look at men, especially particularly very physically fit men. It's probably the first time in my life I could, to some degree, not entirely obviously, but to some degree relate to what it was like to be a woman walking alone in the streets of night. Like the looks of hunger, I'd never experienced that before in my whole life. Like
you
could feel it.
I have been in, I think I'd say that I've always been in reasonably good shape. I think that's something I've never experienced that, and that probably has something to do with me being 5'9".
But they're ripped 5'9" guys.
Just gonna say it.
They're ripped 5 foot.
Oh, just gonna say it, because that's another thing that we can close out with about dating apps. To be honest, is the fixation with like when men think it's a good comeback, if a woman asks for their height, to ask for their weight. It's like, no, it's not. It's not a good comeback because you can infer someone's weight from their pictures. You can't infer someone's height from their pictures. It's a totally different discussion. And the other thing is, guys,
that's very funny.
Short kings
you can
out
infer
there,
someone height from pictures. You can infer someone's height from pictures.
if they're stood next to people, yeah. But like but
you could stand next to things.
No, all right,
like,
stand in a fucking field, and then we'll try and ascertain how tall you are.
I remember I walked into a door once with from one of my sorority friends, and I remember there were lines there. I had no idea what the fuck that meant, and they were like, "Oh, you passed." I was like, "I passed what?" And they marked exactly where 6 foot was on the door. Christ. They know exactly what height you are, bro.
But like, no, but I want to say
they've done it.
This is more to the short guys watching. If a girl asks you your height and that bothers you, just don't talk to her. Don't think that coming back with, well, what's your weight is a good answer, because all you've let her know is that you're insecure about your height. I don't know if I hope somebody else has told you this before me here and now, but if you needed me to tell you that, I'm glad I could be of service. Like, if you are not a tall person, accept it, live with it. Now live your life anyway. It just
and then ask her how big her mouth is.
Yeah,
that's it.
Exactly. And then don't come up with some clever line like, "Oh, you're all the same height lying down." Don't do that, because that makes you seem weird. But it's really it's not good, man. Like,
as opposed to how big your mouth is.
Yeah. Well, no, at least that's quite witty. But the whole thing, because you can tell that you came up with that, which I think is quite good. But then the other thing is, and you and I, Baz, have talked about this before, to the short ladies out there with regards to the dating apps. If you're under 5 foot, don't you dare demand a man who's over 6 foot. There are women out there who are over 6 foot who need those men. They need the 6'5", 6'6", 6'7" guys, because they're over 6 foot and they want to wear heels. I remember saying,
and I'll tell you right now, ladies, I don't care about them, so hit me up. That's fine.
Whereas I had somebody went on a date with her once who was 4'8", and she told me that I wasn't tall enough. The nerve! What do you want me to do?
That's
wear
hysterical.
you as a piece of jewelry? 4'8". What do you think? You swinging off my neck like a medallion? What do you think a guy who's over 6 foot is going to be for you?
Just dragging her along like a rag doll. She's just skidding from
literally,
sidewalk to sidewalk.
Imagine pulling up next to her place and you'd hear the knock on the window.
That must be her. Yeah, no, that's her. That's very funny. That is very funny. Yeah, I mean, look, man, if there's anything I've learned is that no one listens for the most part. People learn by example, and if you want to get the most out of your dating life, just do what you like to do and focus on being the best you can be at it, and then try to meet people who are also interested in the things that you're interested in and where you're competent in, because you'd be surprised the areas of life where there are groupies. I mean, like, and I say that in an like, not like, I don't say that in a manner where it's like, oh, you can just have sex. Like, there are like,
if
as
you're
long
struggling
as you can
in the
show
sexual marketplace, just take on a profession that's famous for groupies. That's what I'm saying. That's what I took.
You'd be surprised. You would be surprised. There are professors who are world leading experts who, after their lectures, shut the fuck up, Ben. Who after their lectures, shut the fuck up, Ben. Shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up, Ben. Who after their lectures are approached by young women.
Mental.
It's just the thing.
Mental.
If that's
I don't deny
what you
it.
want, if that's what you want,
yeah. Basically, no. In fact, you know what? There you go. That's a great note to end it on. If you're struggling in the dating life, it probably means you're woefully incompetent. So fix up.
Correct. There you go.
Thank you very much for watching this episode of Raisin Bread. We sincerely hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please be sure to send it to somebody else who you think would get some value out of it. Like, subscribe, turn on the notification bell so you know when we're making a new upload. Comment below, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode. And in the meantime, please watch one of our other episodes, which are going to appear somewhere around my head.